I'd like to welcome everybody to this event. It's very, very nice to have you here. And in preparing for this event, I kind of thought it's the perfect time of year where people possibly sit down and think, okay, what might I like to be doing this time next September, next autumn, and start maybe Googling and exploring online potential PhD and D.Ed courses. So we thought what better time than to just run an evening like this where we as a school will be able to present the programs that we have on offer. But you're very welcome, and I hope you get something from this. It's quite an informal event, and hopefully there'll be plenty of time for discussion at the end for Q&A. I'm sure you have plenty of questions. Hopefully in the process of this presentation we'll answer some of them, but if not, by all means feel free to speak towards the end. You're more than welcome. There's also a chat option which we would encourage you to use throughout, and we can kind of log the questions and hopefully come back to you on that. So Andrew, do you want to just move on to the next one there for me, the next slide? Thanks. So just to explain what we're going to do during this session, I'm going to speak for a little while. My colleague Professor Andrew Loxley is going to speak, and Dr. Anne Devitt is also going to say a few words. We're going to get a welcome from the head of school. Professor Damien Merchant is here, and he's going to just say hello and introduce the school a little bit. I'm going to give you an overview of the School of Education, looking over the years and the kind of history behind the school, but also the kind of research activity that goes on in the school. As PhD coordinator, I'm also going to describe the School of Education structure, Doctor of Philosophy, or what we know as the Ph.D. And then I'm going to hand the baton over to Andrew, and he's going to talk about the Professional Doctor of Education, or what we call the D.Ed. And hopefully between the two of us, we'll be able to get some clarification for you guys on the difference between the two programs. And much as I'm sure you love to hear from me, Andrew, and Anne and Damien, we are very grateful that students from the school, both past and present, have agreed to come along here this evening and to share their experiences, which I presume you'll take an awful lot from, and hopefully answer questions that you might have for them as well. So as I said, we'll have a nice room for questions and answers towards the end. So as I said, this is a welcome to the School of Education, and I'm going to hand over to Professor Damien Merchant, who's our head of school, just to say hello.
Thanks, Joanne. I think I am.
Yeah. No, you're muted now. Yeah.
Unmute. Right. We're all getting used to this. Thanks very much, Joanne, and welcome to everybody. Welcome, Catherine Conway, I see has just popped up into the chat there, and I know there's many other people in the virtual room this evening. So you're very welcome, and it's an open evening where we want to share with you some possibilities, and the possibilities that by virtue of the fact that you're attending this evening, you're thinking about possibilities at the doctoral level. And what a way to meet. You know, normally for an evening like this, we meet, I'm here in the campus at the moment, and we meet here in Trinity, we talk about the programs, and then we all get a chance to sort of meet informally over a cup of coffee and a few pastries afterwards. But you know, as you know, in the world of Zoom, in the pandemic world of Zoom, I'm afraid you're going to have to brew your own coffee this evening. Andrew has his, I see on screen there, is his coffee there. So although, as Joanne said, although we can't meet afterwards, we can't sort of break into little groups and have a chat just as easily, as Joanne said, please do follow up afterwards this evening in the next days or the weeks or even in the months. If you want to catch up with us, you know, you'll find us easily on the website, on the Trinity website. Contact any of the staff and you know, have a virtual chat with us. You know, I remember myself setting out on my own postgraduate journey. I won't tell you how long ago it was, but looking back really over 3 decades, my overall conclusion is that you don't yet know the opportunities this will bring you. Everybody's thinking of engaging in some doctoral work at the moment. And this, I can assure you, it will open doors. It'll lead to new understanding about what you can do, and it may lead you to places in your work and life that you hadn't thought about. And really, my own reflection looking back is that's such an exciting time. There's such exciting possibilities ahead. I'll say maybe just a few words about Trinity, and I know others will talk about the school. You know, you've all investigated Trinity. You've taken a look at what the college is. It's an internationally recognized college. We're recognized for excellence, for innovation. We are the strongest performer nationally. We're the #1 university in Ireland in international rankings by a mile. We're 101st in the world, I think, in the current rankings. And I don't wish to take from our colleagues elsewhere, you know, around the country, many of whom are our professional, our research colleagues. But I will say that objective international reviews place Trinity first. And this is based on a few things. It's excellence and teaching and research, the provision we make for students, our inclusive approach where we've equality of access for all. And we use the knowledge, we use the research that we undertake for the benefit of Dublin, of Ireland, and for the international community. So the school itself is renowned for excellence and innovation. And I think perhaps Jonne will talk a little bit about this in a minute, perhaps. The context I'd give is, you know, we have 7 academic programs. We have 2 undergraduate programs. We have 5 at postgraduate. And the 2 you're interested in are 2 of the postgraduate doctoral programs. And that's what Jonne and Andrew and colleagues and some students will talk to you about this evening. I want to thank the people on screen here, just by way of introduction. We've met Jonne. Fiona McKibben is the postgraduate research officer, and she works alongside Caroline Morgan in that role, and she's somebody who you would have a lot of dealings with during a postgraduate journey. Professor Andrew Loxley is the coordinator of the D.Ed program. He'll talk in a little while about that. Dr. Anne Devitt is the director of research in many roles in relation to postgraduate student research and also research, general research amongst the staff and coordinating the research groupings. And other colleagues. Not on screen here is Dr. Keith Johnson, is the Director of Postgraduate Teaching and Learning. And these I have to say, you know, they are great people who I hope you get the opportunity to know. They're all experienced. They all have student research and development and excellence in their sights at all times. And it's really because of people like Andrew and Jonne and Keith and Fiona and Anne and others that you'll meet this evening that the School of Education is in the top 100 schools of education in the world. And that's quite an achievement. We've been there for a good number of years. We're a very diverse staff. As you know, if you join us and if you talk to us over the coming weeks and months, find out a little bit about us. We're quite diverse. We, as academics, have very diverse research interests. We collaborate and research on projects nationally and internationally. And as a result of that, we welcome a diverse range of research. So we want to hear what you're interested in. We're not predetermining the type of research that students undertake. We want to hear what you're interested in and to see, can we offer you some guidance in actualizing that research in the form of a D.Ed or a Ph.D. And I think part of our success, and you know, I've just alluded to some of the successes in the school, but part of that success rests on our practice and our philosophy of encouraging students to actively contribute to the school's research culture. So we, as you'll hear later, we encourage you to join the research groups with staff. We encourage you to present your research here in Trinity, at national conferences and in international conferences. So you'll hear from some students and graduates this evening. And I think you'll hear, and I think you'll understand that we have a very good reputation in the School of Education for looking after our doctoral students, for assisting you along the way, and thus ensuring very high completion rates a few years down the line as you move towards graduation. So in summary, thank you for coming along this evening. Thanks for showing the interest in what we do. I hope you'll get a taste this evening of what we do, and in due course, perhaps come and join us in Trinity, and hopefully on site, not in this virtual world. I know that some of you might be joining us this evening simply to check out what we do, what sort of stuff we do, and see if it's for you. And absolutely, you're very welcome. Delighted to meet with you. So I do hope you find the evening useful. I really would look forward to perhaps meeting you in person soon, and enjoy the rest of the evening, and I hope you find it fruitful. So Joanne, I'll hand back to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Damien. That was great. And Andrew, I'll ask you, to move along there. So I'm just going to give you an overview about the School of Education itself. It's actually was established in 1905, and it had the first professorial chair in education in Ireland. So it has quite a long tradition of offering research degrees, both at master's and doctoral level. It's the first university in Ireland to introduce the professional doctorate of education. And as Damien said there, Andrew's going to go into some detail about that in a little while. And Damien also mentioned there that we're the highest ranked school of education in Ireland. So we're 73rd in the QS World Rankings. And I think one of the things that struck me when I joined the school a couple of years ago is just how research active the staff of the school are. So that's research active, obviously, in terms of supervision with students, but also in empirical research going on in terms of the Irish educational landscape. So we have a very strong kind of research culture within the school. We've got 2 university research centres, and as Damien mentioned there as well, 4 research groups. You might know us before tonight, some of you anyway, might know us just from the research conferences that we've held over the last number of years and continue to do now in an online format. And we also run seminars every month and really try and disseminate the work of the staff, but also the students as much as we can, so that they can impact on decision making and policy and practice as well. So we've got 15 full-time academic staff, we've got 8 admin staff, and the administration staff are hugely important to the school and really make many of these programs run quite efficiently. So we have 500 students and 80 of those at doctoral level. We have 200 on the M.Ed programs, 160 on the professional Masters of Education, and 40 on the Bachelor of Music Education as well. As Damien mentioned there, we've a huge amount of completions and graduations per year. And we have experienced doctoral supervisors, and as I mentioned, all of whom are research active. And maybe somebody might throw the profile of the staff into the chat there if anybody wants to have a look. But the best piece of advice I could give you this evening is to look through the staff profile pages and see, to the extent you probably all have a research kind of area or passion that you would like to explore in a PhD, just to see whether it aligns in any way with particular staff members. I think if you could, spend some time doing that, it might be time well spent. Andrew, I might get you to move along there as well. So there's a beautiful sunny day. As Damien mentioned, we're not in person, and normally you get to walk through campus on an event like this, but there's a beautiful sunny day on Front Square at a graduation with some of our recent graduates. And I'm going to talk through now the structured PhD program. So this is many of the questions that I hope I'll answer for you. And if not, throw it in the chat, or maybe at the end you can raise them as well if you have any outstanding questions. So the PhD can be taken 4 years on a full-time basis or 6 years part-time. And really what we say about our PhD is an opportunity to engage in high quality research that makes an original contribution to knowledge. And really, as I said, you probably have various ideas that you would put into a proposal at this stage. And it can be, the PhD, I suppose, can be on any topic related to education once it's agreed with your potential supervisor. As you may well know, the production, it ends in the production of a 100,000 word thesis. And as part of your program, you undertake a couple of mandatory modules in research methods, basically giving you the nuts and bolts of the research process, but also research integrity module, which is run on a college-wide basis. And I think importantly, thinking back to my own PhD, one of the most important things is that you're supported and guided by your supervisor, and the relationship with your supervisor is really, really important. And you can often have more than one supervisor, and it's possibly something that I would recommend to get different viewpoints on your research topic. But these people, or that person, is appointed to you at the start, and you begin your journey together, if you like, from there on in. So another series of questions that we often get is what the entry requirements are for going onto the PhD program. It's a 2-1 honours degree. And possibly, again, another kind of strong piece of advice is to give some attention to your research proposal that demonstrates the potential to work at doctoral level. So this is where you introduce yourself to a potential supervisor and write up the area that you're interested in such a way that, you know, that you kind of demonstrate your ability, if you like. In addition to holding your entry-level qualification, this process often involves an interview with a potential supervisor, and this is where you discuss and evaluate that proposal that you have written and the potential or suitability for you and the proposal, if you like, to go on to doctoral level. And at that stage then, the application is reviewed by the school's Postgraduate Applications Committee, or PAC, and then you'll be notified as to whether you're successful onto the programme. So that's the kind of process in a nutshell, if you like. And we just thought we'd talk you through then what the years can look like for you, the typical full-time PhD student. Now, this can be twice as long if you're a part-time student, so it really depends on your own circumstances. So if you like, at the start, you undertake those mandatory modules that I mentioned. It's that time when you really get your teeth into the literature review and the context of the study that you're wishing to undertake. And, you know, you look at your ethics application and you're essentially preparing yourself for perhaps fieldwork that you're planning on and undertaking by refining your ethics application and getting that approved. And also then kind of nailing down your methodology. So at the proposal level, you will probably outline these things in some amount of detail. And it's during those couple of years that you pin them down and you kind of iron out what exactly you're planning on doing in advance of perhaps going out into the field and collecting data or whatever it might be. In the middle 2 years, you have a thing called the confirmation process. This is something that I would have really liked during my own PhD years. It didn't exist back then, but it's an opportunity for you to sit in front of a confirmation committee, it's called in many ways, and present your work and submit a number of chapters, draft chapters to them. And it's a very constructive process where they give you feedback on how you're faring in your PhD and whether you're good to go and continue on the PhD program as you are. And I think it's a very valuable process for students at that kind of critical stage of their PhD journey. And during these middle 2 years then as well, is when hopefully you have your ethics approval and you can venture out into doing fieldwork or something equivalent depending on your research area. So this can be quite an exciting time after maybe drowning in literature for a little while, that you're able to actually go out into the field and get some of the kind of data collection part done, if that's the way your thesis is. And then at the end, it's not surprising, you begin then the analysis part where you start drawing or writing up conclusions or findings about the fieldwork that you've carried out. And this all is finalised then in your viva voce examination, where you're examined on your thesis and you get an opportunity to defend it and end up on a sunny day on Front Square like that photograph where you have your graduation. That's the intention anyway. So, Andrew, I'm going to hand over to you now. Maybe you could go through the D.Ed process.
Yeah, just unmute myself there. Yeah, and again, there's a nice picture of a nice sunny day, and you can see that the D.Ed colours are slightly different from the PhD colours. There we have a sort of nice Aston Villa colours for you to wear if you come and do the D.Ed. So if anything, and you're motivated to come and do professional doctorate in education, then come for the colours alone. I'm just going to, a bit like Joanne, I'll just give a fairly quick overview of the program. Again, it's quite similar-ish in a number of respects to the PhD, but it's also very different as well in a number of respects as well. For the first part, it's 4 years part-time, and it was deliberately designed, and we designed it 15 years ago now, and our first cohort we took in 2005. But when I think Damien was involved in the design with me as well in the program all these years ago now, we deliberately designed it with a very specific focus that it was going to be part-time, and it was going to try and do it get people to do it in 4 years, and it would have a very distinctive structure to which would be quite different from the PhD which we offered at the time, and it's all very different from the PhD we offer now. And again, people one of the things is that we found over the years that when people are deciding whether to do a PhD or a D.Ed, they're very definite in what they want to do. We have very definite sort of D.Ed students, a very definite PhD students. So they think very long and hard about which particular path they wish to take. But I can sort of deal with any questions around that, or we can ask the students at the end who are doing it and finished it, rather than me. So one of the things that's very similar to the PhD, and it's a real marker of the program, is the ability, the opportunity to engage in substantial and sustained high quality research. So in terms of that, there's no difference between that and the PhD. It's a level 10 qualification. The criteria by which the thesis is examined is a slightly shorter thesis, is exactly the same as the PhD, so it's completely on par with that. The difference, and again, one of the differences is that it's cohort based, and we only ever take in a small number of students, and we only take in students every other year as well on the program. And the cohortness is very much appreciated by the students, as hopefully they'll testify at the end, because they do work together as a group for almost 4-5 years and sort of hang together for sort of good company and safety and support and all other lovely things that happen when they're into a cohort. And that's worked very, very well for us over the years and worked very well for the students as well. The other thing is that separates the D.Ed off from the PhD is its particular focus on professional practice. With the D.Ed, you can come in and practically do research on whatever you want to do within the realms of education. The D.Ed has always focused on people wanting to explore some aspect of their own professional practice, and that's quite evident from the students who have come through the program over the years, and the theses and the research work that they've done. It's very, very much based practice and professional practice oriented, whatever that means. However that is conceptualized, again, is very, very different for each of the students, but nonetheless it's all about them and their work. The other thing that separates us off from the PhD is that students do five modules with this, and again I'll dig into that in a bit more detail in the next slide. And we produce a slightly shorter thesis as well, which actually is more challenging. If you've got 100,000 words to work with, you can be a bit more expansive, but trying to do the same quality work, I'm putting you off here, as a sort of level 10, as a doctoral thesis within a slightly shorter word count is a real challenge. Is incredibly difficult thing to do, but most students who start on the program get through and they produce work of real good quality as well there. And again, the reason why there's slightly less word count is because they do the 5 modules, and so they're writing assignments for these modules as well, and that all feeds into the thesis as well there. So every word that somebody writes in their assignment, it actually feeds in to the thesis, and no word is wasted, we hope. So just to sort of move on to deal with the sort of that differentiation between the D.Ed and the PhD, is that it really is about students themselves questioning and their own sort of personal, and again that's sort of unavoidable really, and professional knowledge in a deep and meaningful way. One of my colleagues, Aidan Siri, I've worked with over the years, has always said that if you're not changed at the end of the process, whether doing a professional doctorate or whether the PhD, then we haven't done our jobs properly. So again, there is an element of transformation here in practice and personal as well there. And the other thing is that we like to do on the program, and we've tried to do this over the years, is to be innovative and creative in our own pedagogical practice as practitioners. Again, people who work on the D.Ed, the various people who come do lecture, and the various academics, they're very deeply engaged in their own research, but they're also deeply engaged in their own pedagogical practice as well. So we're always not saying that we do try our sort of exposure experiments on you, but we always like to think that it's a great opportunity to introduce students to new and innovative ways of teaching and learning. And it also cuts both ways as well. We also learn a lot from the students. Again, the students who come onto the program are all very, very experienced professionals in their own right. So again, there's a lot of interchange that takes place between us who work on the program and the students on the program as well. So again, it's sort of a bit like the PhD. It sort of has these three components to it. It has supervision. Supervision is incredibly important on the D.Ed as well. Similar to the PhD, students are given a supervisor from day one. In fact, the whole process, the application process, similar to the PhD, is around finding an appropriate supervisor for an applicant and going through the process of discussing a potential application and research proposal, and making sure that that relationship is in place even before you as a student register. And that's incredibly important, that the supervisor also has an expert knowledge within the area as well that you wish to do your own research in. So a lot of the D.Ed is very much organised and focused on the research, and that was deliberate in the design of the programme right from the start. And again, the modules that we offer, these are really there to sort of challenge you intellectually, and they certainly do. So some of the students would say as well, to introduce people to new ideas, old ideas in a different way, and also to support you through your D.Ed journey, as we would say there. And again, it's sort of just giving you ideas which speak directly or even indirectly to the research work that you'll be doing. But either way, it's fairly challenging, and over the years, students have found them incredibly useful in scaffolding their research work. And then there's the research part itself as well. Right from the start, you're engaged in doing your research there. Other professional doctorate programs I've worked on in the past and know of there, you might not start doing your research or even have your supervisor until you're halfway through the program. We deliberately designed it so you're right into the research right from the start, so you are a researcher alongside your supervisor as well, right from the off. Just to give you a bit like Joanne's slide around the sort of the year by year structure here. This is the D.Ed. It sort of looks a bit more complicated than the PhD, but because it has a more structure to it, and it has a cohort base to it, then it's obviously it needs to be a little more should we say systematic there. But again, you do much similar kind of activities that you will do on a PhD. The modules that run over the 3 years. You do research methodology mainly with me over 3 years, and then you're expected to work on your thesis with your supervisor as well right from the start. And there are various milestones built in to each year as well that students are expected to meet. And again, similar to the PhD, there's a confirmation where students' work is looked at and critically discussed with someone who's not necessarily involved with your work, with your thesis, but nonetheless is to ensure that the work's okay and you're ready to move on to the next stage, which is go out into the wild and generate your data. And then year 3, you're out there in the wild generating your data, doing your field work. And then in year 4, it's very much emphasis on trying to get the thing finished, whereas you'll do your thesis, start putting it together, and then we'll do the business of the viva as well at the end. So similar to the PhD, you will have a viva. You will be examined on your thesis by 2 examiners there, and it'll give you an opportunity to have a critical conversation with 2 other people about your work. And then hopefully you'll end up with a nice sunny afternoon on Trinity Front Square, dressed in your nice Aston Villa colours. Okay, and then getting into the D.Ed, what we again we thought long and hard about what we wanted people to have when to get into it, and we thought, okay, a master's would be very good because again, it's what we found in the past is that people can bring a body of expertise, a body of knowledge that they've generated within a master's, and that gives them a really good sort of foundation onto the D.Ed, particularly coming into it from sort of practice-based sort of occupations and careers as well. There, we usually look for a minimum of 3 years experience in education context there, and that works well. Again, we do like people to come in who do have a sort of a professional background, a practice background, because that's really what the program is about. And again, similar to the to the PhD, we look for a good quality proposal that shows that there's potential to work at doctoral work. And again, we always interview people as well, make this contact with potential students. And again, as Joanne was saying, it's very, very important that a lot of work, a lot of pre-formal application work is done around conversations between potential supervisors, just to make sure that students are, you know, that you looking for the right supervisor, and the supervisor can support you and is interested in your work as well. And we find that works very well over the years, and we're very open to this, and we're all very, you know, all the academics who work on the program welcome those kind of informal conversations with people. Again, it's important to make sure that this is the right program for you, and that we are the right people for you as well, and that's incredibly important. And that usually might take 1 or 2 conversations with academic staff to do that, because again, it's a big commitment. Picking up on the PhD, if you're part-time, it's like 6 years of your life that you're going to dedicate to this. Even the D.Ed, you know, it could 4 years of your life you're going to be dedicating to something that's incredibly intense, and most students will say it can be quite overwhelming as well. It can take over your life as well if you let it. As I found out when I did mine many years ago, and I'm sure Damien found the same as well, and Joanne and Anne also found the same as well. And the students who talk about their work, again, it can be very, very, very all-encompassing as an experience, but hugely worthwhile. Okay, and just very quickly, again, we both touched on this, both myself and Joanne, but it's really useful to just to reiterate it, that the supervisor is absolutely critical here. Having a good proposal is one thing, but having a supervisor who has gone through the process, who understands the doctoral process, who is both an expert in their own subject knowledge area, but also has a huge amount of methodological expertise. Again, one of the key things that we're trying to do within the School of Education for both the PhD and the D.Ed is that you come out at the end of this capable and competent and hugely experienced researchers in your own right. So again, your peers in making, as we would like to say. And again, the supervisor is a person who has a lot of methodological and subject expertise, who can scaffold and facilitate that and guide you through that process. The work is your own, essentially, but we try and do our best to try and ensure that we pass on our wisdom, so to speak, with you and help you through that. There's a lot of experienced supervisors in the school, and I think that's incredibly important for a student to feel as though that, you know, that they're going to be looked after there. And it is a very different experience for, even if you've done a piece of empirical work for your master's study or your undergraduate study. Working with a supervisor, working on a sort of doctoral thesis, is a different scope and scale and magnitude of work. And again, the supervisor is absolutely critical to that. And again, the other thing is, most of us have gone through the process as well. So you won't be alone there, either as, you know, both students and as supervisors as well. And to be honest, I wouldn't want to do another one. And then the other thing is that's really important is that this relationship is a long-term relationship, and it needs to be structured as well. And one of the things that we, as Damien was saying, that we're very supportive of students and their journey through their doctoral work. But one of the things is really important is this sort of regularity of contact and the relationship, structuring the relationship with the supervisor as well. That's absolutely vital to sort of successful completion of the thesis. The other thing that I think is really important to mention, and this comes back to Damien's comment about support, and also Joanne as well, that it's not just about academic support from your supervisor or the lecturers on the various modules. That Fiona McKibben and Caroline Morgan, they give huge amount of time and support, again, to show the importance that the school has for doctoral students. Is we dedicate, you know, two administrators to looking after our doctoral students, and that we find that's incredibly important. And we find it's a great benefit to, say, myself and Joanne and other people who work on the program, that a lot of the time, that a lot of the issues and a lot of the contacts are done through Fiona and Caroline, and students are incredibly appreciative and very, very sort of complimentary of the work that they do, and they do an awful lot of the sort of the tricky work that Joanne run away from, a lot of the bureaucratic and admin work that's necessary to make the programs run, because they are quite complex. I mean, it might not seem very complex because of the number of students, but they are quite messy and they are quite distinctive and they are quite different. And both Caroline and Fiona have a wealth of knowledge, and again, very, very supportive for students, and work as a wonderful sort of interface between ourselves as supervisors, academics, and also the wider college structure as well. Trinity is an interesting place if you come as a student, if you haven't been a student there, in terms of managing its wider administrative network. And both Fiona and Caroline are very, very experienced at dealing with queries around, oh, I don't know, say fees or registration and whatever. They're very, very good at doing that. So we always sort of lean on them quite heavily to spot it. So they're very, very good. So you get lots of support if you do come to us in that regard. Oops, there. Okay. So the other thing that's really important is that, and I think Anne might say something around this, but as a slight preamble, is that one of the things that you're coming into, and Damien alluded to there, that the school is very highly ranked in terms of its research. So one of the things you're coming in as a research student is you're coming into a very, very active research culture, and you are part of that. You're not just a student, but you are seen as an emerging active researcher within the school. And we take it very, very seriously, and we try and incorporate and engage you as postgrad research students to become as part of that culture with us as well. Did you, so I'll just hand over to Anne. If you want to unmute there, Anne.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Yeah, so just to say a bit about the research culture in the school, and as all of the, Damien and Joanne and Andrew said so far, that it is a very vibrant research environment in the school, and even now, even when none of us are on site and we're not able to meet each other, it remains very vibrant, and there's a lot of activity going on in online webinars and other communication, other ways, modes of communication. So some of the things that our doctoral students will be very involved in, both as participants, attending, and also delivering, sharing and disseminating their own work. So there are coffee mornings regularly, or there were, I suppose, and now they're being run online by Joanne, coffee mornings for doctoral students to share and kind of gather their own, gather and discuss their work. The Talk About Education seminar series was set up a couple of years ago by doctoral students, run by doctoral students, and it is kind of focusing, I suppose, on the process, if you like, very much of doing research. So it's a forum for people to talk about how they're getting on with their research and how the process goes, and also to share early stage research, in a kind of very supportive environment. We have a monthly seminar series that varies from members of staff to outside academics to doctoral students, and across a whole range of people on a range of different themes. And typically when we're physically present, we would have monthly seminars running in the arts building. And since we've gone online, we have webinars happening even nearly every 2 weeks at this point in Zoom. And then one of the highlights of the year for the school and it is the Postgraduate Research Conference, which is completely run by research students. It's supported by the school in the sense of that Fiona McKibben provides the administrative support, and we provide funding for for refreshments and so on for the conference. But it is fully run and managed by a committee of research students, and we have Mags Amond here, who chaired the group that ran it last year, and also Tanya is here. Many people who were involved in the conference over the last couple of years are here, and that's a really fun and engaging environment for sharing the results of your doctoral research. Very supportive environment. We also run, or they, over the last number of years, they've run workshops where, again, focusing on the process and looking at, queries that areas where doctoral students might, want some input or just want a bit of discussion about what's going on. And I can't remember the theme for this year. But the committee for this year is already up and running. Sorry, go on, Mary.
Do you want me to give you the theme?
Oh, please do, yeah, because Mary's leading the, and actually, yeah, Mary, I should have named you there. Mary's leading the committee this year.
If life gives you lemons, make lemonade, as in if research gives you lemons, make lemonade, because of the changes we've all had to make for our research with the pandemic.
Yeah, so Mary Quirk's doing an excellent job of heading up the committee there that are leading the research conference this year. So I'm not sure where I am with the slides. Oh yeah, so here we are, the Talk About Education seminar series. So that was put together and convened, I suppose. Am I here, Andrew, in the right place?
Yeah, it's all right.
Cool.
It's all right. My slides have gone a bit funny. I wasn't expecting this.
No problem. Yeah, so Emily Neenan completed her PhD with us. In fact, she just did her Viva this autumn, and she's doing a postdoc with us in the school. And she set this up a number of years ago, and it's kind of it has its own momentum at this point. But it's very much around learning to communicate your research, and that certainly would be a big focus in the school, is in developing our doctoral students, supporting our students to communicate and disseminate their research in a wide variety of ways, and also focusing on the process of research, because certainly it is it's a road that has ups and downs, and everyone needs support as they go through that process. So typically once a month, every second Thursday. So do you want to?
Yeah, and again, this is the research seminars more generally in the school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess just a bit more information on that. It's actually the last Thursday of the month. It turned out to be the first Thursday of the month this year because I got the number of days in one of the months wrong. But typically it's the last Thursday of the month, and certainly the doctoral students and all of our students are very much encouraged to attend and to contribute. And our doctoral students would often contribute kind of in the later stages of their PhD when they're sharing their findings. And it's a very supportive environment and an informal kind of atmosphere to share research. So the timetable goes up on our research calendar, and usually organised a couple of months ahead. And all our students receive notifications about that by email. So you can find out about any of our upcoming, and they're open, in fact, all the webinars are open to the public and all of the seminars too. And you can find out about these on our website, so tcd.ie/education/events. So the annual, oh gosh, here, yeah, I guess we've talked about this already. And maybe, Mary, I might hand over to you just to say about the experience of Mary and potentially Mags, because I know, Mary, you're taking it over now, of what this involves, how the being involved on the organizing side, and maybe also on the attendee or delivering side.
Okay, I'm sure I'll pass over to Mags very quickly because I've just taken the baton on, and they did an amazing job last year with everything that came forward. This year we have the challenge of designing it to be completely virtual, just to basically be able to put away any uncertainties from the point of view of how we run the conference itself. But we are looking at it focusing on, maybe what we need to think about in terms of how we engage in our research, the methodologies, the ethics, all of the questions it throws up for us. What does it do in terms of changing us as researchers? And we're just beginning to expand on those themes and play with it a little bit, because we also want to have a little bit of fun. Everything has got so serious. So pass over to Mags about last year, maybe.
Yeah, well, I think the pictures say it all. It's a very vibrant day, and it's a great way to get to know your cohort. And there's a picture of me there, and I think we give Damien about 5 minutes. The head of school gets about 5 minutes, and the rest is students, our own cohort, students from some other colleges as well. But it really is a superb way to get to know each other. That's what I would say. What you see in the pictures there is the atmosphere of the day.
And just to say that this year, it was planned for a face-to-face session in this beautiful building, the Long Room Hub, and Mags and her team pivoted, as they say, transformed the whole thing once March and the lockdown happened, and it all happened online, and it was equally a really fun experience. I'm sure everyone who was involved in the organizing was completely exhausted by the end of it, but they did an excellent job online, following on from an excellent job the previous year and in previous years face-to-face.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. And I would say the key thing in the pivot was that we had, yes, students organizing the content, but there was the most incredible overnight 0-hour cooperation between faculty and students, and I think that underpins everything Damien said at the start. The cooperative group feeling in the school came to the good.
I was going to say just that the other thing that's useful to say that we also encourage our doctoral students to attend conferences and seminars beyond the walls of Trinity as well. They were very keen to push you out into the big wide world for you to not just share your work with other people, but also share and network the experience of developing those contacts, and just the experience of being part of the sort of conference and seminar scene beyond Trinity as well is a very important part of your sort of doctoral education. Again, our students find it incredibly useful over the years to do that, and particularly in the later stages when they're ready to start sharing their work with other people as well.
If I can come in, Anne, for a second, I think what I'd say of the student conference, it really is an incubator for those ideas, and it prepares students for, you know, engagement with the conferences that Andrew has mentioned. And absolutely right, we encourage people to, you know, be part of the postgraduate student conference, be part of national and international conferences. And I have to say that there is some funding available for students to attend conferences. I wish it were a greater pool of funding, but if you are attending, if you're presenting, you know, there are some monies available. So it's something that we not only encourage, but we encourage with a little bit of hard cash as well.
And it's very good for your research work as well. We find that when students go off and doing the presentations, and so even now most of our students are very experienced practitioners and teachers and used to standing up and talking to people, but they're absolutely terrified when they have to go and do a 20-minute presentation of their own research work. But they find it incredibly useful in terms of sharpening and honing not only the presentational skills, but also their thesis work more generally. So there is a lot of value to be had in doing the conferences and doing the seminars.
And just to say about about developing your research profile and so on, as part of the doctoral program, all students in college are required to do a 5-credit module that is about impact and integrity. So one dimension of that is building your online profile. So your ORC-ID, which is like a unique identifier for researchers, building your presence online in the Trinity research system, and kind of developing a message, I suppose, around what work you're doing and what you want to contribute. And then as part of your doctoral work, as Andrew and Damien have said, you'll build up your expertise and your profile through beginning with national conferences, maybe in the first year or the first 2 years if you're part-time, moving on to international conferences and journal publications. So that's very much the trajectory that your supervisor would look to support with you, that by the end you are in contact with people in your field and you have, you're developing your visibility within that field as an expert, because that's what the Vive is about. It's you demonstrating at the end that within your field you are an expert in that area.
And it's also about doing something with the work as well, other than just having it sit between two bits of cardboard. But it's about taking that work and sharing it with the rest of the world as well there, and doing something with it beyond the degree itself. And I think by doing the seminars and the conferences, it develops that particular disposition in students. And I said, like Damien, I wish I had that when I was doing mine, but it wasn't really expected. You just did the big fat book and that was it. Thank you very much. So anything else on research, Anne, did you want to say before we move on?
Just one last thing, and I'm just saying it thinking with Amy, I just see Amy there. So there can be opportunities that come up during your program, you know, during your doctorate, to do extensions of your work and extensions of your research. And Amy, you might, do you want to say a little bit about that recent study that you presented at one of the webinars there recently for Trinity, and how that emerged, I suppose?
So Dr. Anne Davitt has been instrumental in promoting my research and just teaching me how to have kind of a greater profile as a researcher. My baseline project is on leadership in STEM education primary level, and I'm a full-time primary school teacher. My master's is in music, so I'm very much a practitioner. I'm enrolled in the fourth year of the doctorate in education at the moment. So coming into the program, I had actually met my supervisor at a science fair when I was there with my class group, so with my students, and I hadn't really thought about doing a doctorate or a PhD. I was quite happy being a teacher, and I came along to Trinity, talked with a couple of the staff members there, and they really were. And I just thought this could be something for me. Research, I could be interested in research. So yeah, as I said, it's about STEM education and leadership. Basically, I carried out a national survey, and the results of the survey showed that yes, principals are very interested in STEM. It's a great initiative, but there's a lot of extra job demands that already face them. So when COVID came around, I had already collected the data that I needed for my doctorate. So we decided to do a follow-up survey, national survey for primary school principals and secondary school principals on the impact that school closures had and that COVID-19 has had on them with regards to their well-being, the job demands, and moving to a digital platform, which was very new for most principals. The research, we completed a report. It's a cross-collaboration project between the School of Education and the School of Business. I have 3 supervisors now, so 2 from the School of Education and 1 from the School of Business. And I think that's something that's really important for anyone who might have a project that is, yes, educational based. There is room for collaboration with other schools within Trinity, and I have found that that's really kind of opened up the world of research a lot more for me. So we have the HR side from the business school, but also the educational perspective from the School of Education. So we finished the report in September, and Anne was fantastic. She worked with myself and my supervisors to prepare a launch, a Zoom launch, and we had the director of the Teaching Council, we had the director of the PDST, the INTO president. So lots of big organizations, heads from big organizations come to this launch and listen to the research and the findings. And for me, this was incredible. I'm a teacher. I started off 4 years ago as a teacher, had never carried out any research. And to think that I've come that far, to have my research in the Irish Times, and to be working with such high caliber individuals. And it's an opportunity that I definitely wouldn't have had if I hadn't signed up for the doctorate. And I think Trinity, a lot more so than other universities that I've been in the past, especially in the School of Education, there's a really strong community atmosphere. And yes, you work with 1 or 2 supervisors usually, but if you reach out to anybody in the School of Education, they're happy to help. And that's what I found with Anne. Anne put in an incredible amount of work to get that launch organized for me. Fiona, for administration purposes, there's just, you can send an email and you'll have a reply within minutes usually, even if it's something that, even if your problem doesn't, directly relate to the School of Education, you'll have an answer. Like you're very well catered for. The undergraduate or the postgraduate conference that Mags spoke about already, that was kind of a stepping stone for me. And it really gave me great confidence to present my research in my first year and to go on and apply for grants. Yesterday, I was told I got the Teaching Council bursary, and it, again, a lot of different staff members from the School of Education would have helped me with my application for that and given me advice over the last few years on how to improve. To trying to think if there's anything else that I've missed. There's a lot more opportunities, as I said, as a doctoral student. Your network really grows because of the practitioner-based research that you're doing. And I've gone from, as I said, from being a primary school teacher to now doing part-time lecturing, master's thesis supervision, working with teachers' unions, working with outreach, STEM programs like the RDS. So it really does open up a lot more career opportunities for you. And my main message is don't be shy and really reach out within the School of Education if you do sign up, to increase your network and to increase the amount of opportunities that the potential opportunities that you can have. I had also planned a conference for primary school principals facilitated by Fiona McKibben in the School of Education and the cross collaboration with the School of Business. And we were due to have 200 principals. Again, the School of Education, we're going to fund that conference. So there's no end to the opportunities that, that the School of Education will give you. You just have to ask for them and they'll make it happen. So I think definitely, as opposed to other universities, you're really treated like an equal. You almost feel, like an equal to your supervisors and your lecturers, which is really a really nice feeling to have as a student. So I'd highly recommend School of Education, whether it's PhD or a doctorate. I'd highly recommend it to anyone who's interested.
Jakers, thanks, Amy.
Sorry.
I'm almost tempted to do another one. Just to thank you, Amy, thank you, Anne. Just back to the more prosaic, and again, we've had other students who quite happily like to talk about their experience as well. So just very quickly about the more formal aspects of it. You probably picked up that Joanne looks after the PhD stuff, and I look after the D.Ed stuff, and we're more than happy to take questions, inquiries, however sort of speculative or however solid they are. Please do contact us there. There's quite a lot of information on the School of Education website. Our handbooks are up there. The D.Ed handbook is up there, which has a lot more information about that structure and the modules and what's expected of students and the thesis and the confirmation. And the same with the PhD as well. There you can find an awful lot about the program from our handbooks. If you so wish, our sort of staff lists and their expertise and their publications and they're all their bits and pieces. Again, it's all on the website there, and we're usually fairly complete in terms of talking about what we want to do. And I think Amy was also made the point there that if you have someone come to one of the supervisors potentially with an idea, and we might not be able to completely facilitate you, we could entertain the idea of perhaps a joint supervision with someone either within the school or outside the school as well there, and we do that quite regularly. So again, we would say, as I think as Amy was saying, just try us really. And we're always very, very open to ideas. So the other thing is that to make the formal application, once you get to that stage, you have to go through the TCD system, and there's a very specific School of Education research degree portal, and that'll bring you into the more formal dimensions of going through the process of applying and uploading all your transcripts and references and all the other bits and pieces that we like to get from you to formalize that process. But I think, as Joanne and I said, really sort of emphasize the point, before you get to that stage, do sort of engage in informal conversations with the school, I think, again, because some of the times when people apply and they are perfectly qualified to come on the program, it might be a simple case that we don't have anyone to supervise you. So you've probably gone through all that process of going through the application, and it can be a bit long-winded, only to find that we say no because we don't have anyone to supervise you, which is a real shame. And we can sort of deal with that in an informal way. And it's not saying it happens a lot, but it does happen on an occasion there. Okay, I'll see what's next on the. Oh yeah, here we go on the good stuff now. That was enough of us there. We probably talked a bit too long. We have a selection of students past and present from the PhD and the D.Ed. We didn't deliberately split them up like this, so they're two distinct cohorts. But what you'll get to see, I think, from the from the titles of their work, that the D.Ed ones are very distinctly based on professional practice, and the PhD ones span a sort of a quite a broader sort of terrain of research there. And again, that's very much part and parcel between the PhD and the D.Ed, one of the distinct differences there. Now, you've heard from Amy. Thank you, Amy. That was really good. Should we hear from Mary? Do you want to, are you there, Mary? Mary Quack?
I am, yes.
Yeah, very good, Mary Quack. Do you want to say just very quickly about your stuff, because you're year 3 PhD, and you're doing something that's not hugely practice related, so it's definitely not D.Ed territory, definitely PhD territory.
Yes, possibly. Thank you very much, Andrew. I suppose my background was that I came from the NGO sector, in that I was at director level with a head for over 15 years. And it's partially what brought me, I suppose, to the doctorate. I'd had engagement with Trinity through my work on research projects, and had very much liked and enjoyed that, and seemed to get myself into conversations with people, and ended up doing a doctorate, which I often joke is the greatest midlife crisis anybody can ever have. But having said that, I think that it's been an awakening, I suppose. Others have used that kind of word. I would say that while I was working in a head and in the area of disability, I'm also a qualified career guidance counsellor, and have worked, have set up a private practice over 10 years, but I've worked in all the sectors except in schools. So I suppose I would say I'm involved in education everywhere but in a formal classroom, and just felt that I was seeing things that I wanted to learn more about. I had loved my master's about 15 years ago, and took me a long time to come back, but I have done, and I've had no regrets. So I get to go deep into some of the things that I like to look at and ask questions about, and get up close and personal with theorists that most people in previous jobs might have found very boring, but I think are very exciting. And it's, while I'm there 3 years, I would reiterate a bit what Amy said, that the opportunities, which I actually didn't expect, I kind of thought, having done other courses, the opportunities come when the course is done. I hadn't expected them to come as soon as you started. I've been very lucky that I've had opportunities at conferences from literally year 1. And now with the postgraduate conference this year, I'm excited to be involved with that. What some might know here, but it's news that I had just a couple of months ago. I've signed a book contract, which I never thought I would do. But it's these kind of things. I mean, I would have joked with my supervisor when the editors contacted me that I thought it was spam, but it's, you know, it's this notion of it'll all happen when you graduate, but it doesn't. It's actually all part of the journey. And one of the things I suppose we were to say to people, you know, well, outside of the why would you do it, or I think the school speaks for itself. My supervisor, I have a great relationship with him, and I think it's very important to be able to go for a cup of coffee and even pick a row and come away smiling, because, you know, it's amazing what you will get talking about. I think there's an awful lot of people in the school that do support your thinking and your work in so many different ways. And even other researchers, you know, other students, but certainly going to my first international conference, I was actually, even though I presented before, was very nervous, and it was 3 people within the school pretty much packed me into a car and took me across Europe. And it was the best thing they ever did. I think it was one of those things I'll never forget. But from the point of view of, you know, what advice would I give anybody who's doing it? It's if you're here at all, I think you're asking yourself, is it something I want to do? You're probably halfway there, but is it worth doing? Most definitely. But you don't just learn about your topic or about, you know, I'm sure it's the same in the D.Ed. You don't just learn about what you're putting your head down reading. You actually learn an awful lot about yourself and the world around you and how it's working. And I think there's an awful lot of positives in that. And I'm sure others will say the same.
Thank you, Mary, for that. I'm just going to ask Frank Cullen, one of our D.Ed graduates, if you're there, Frank.
Yes, still here, Andrew.
There you go. So Frank is testimony that there is life at the end of the tunnel there, and also that you can actually do something with this as well. So again, it isn't just a nice sort of book to have on the shelf, but it actually can be very, very useful in your career as well.
Yeah, so I completed the D.Ed on a part-time basis And I initially entered the D.Ed just as a self-motivation, hadn't got any aspirations of moving up in my career. I was quite happy where I was teaching for 22 years. So I entered as a very young student onto the program, just before my 21st birthday, having spent 22 years teaching. Absolutely enjoyed it. I found the program to be extremely interesting, and if there was any piece of advice I'd give you for looking at what type of research you do, is to match it up with what you enjoy doing. In terms of, I linked it into international culinary internships, because I was coordinating the international internships as part of my academic role, where I was teaching restaurant service and operation management over the years. So why not do something in an area that's going to benefit you? Shortly after graduating from the program, I found myself in an assistant head of schools role, and very quickly then into the head of school role within DIT, as we were formerly. It's now TU Dublin, so I'm the head of school in the School of Culinary Arts. And I developed a framework for international internships in relation to educating and preparing students for international internships. And we have implemented that framework within the school, and it works extremely well in terms of preparing, monitoring, and supporting students while out on internship. The conferences that I actually engaged in, I did a number of them over in Paris, and also gave talks in Belgium. And for my sins of picking that particular type of research, I was already connected with Leonardo da Vinci projects, and I was one of the panelists there. So I actually got supported to travel around Europe whilst doing the Ph.D, the D.Ed research that I was engaged in. Thoroughly enjoyed it. At the same time, I would give a word of caution. It is a big commitment, and you need to be able to look at the balance between life and being a D.Ed student, and it'll work. And it does work. As a part-time student, I found that I was able to balance out the life. It was tough near the end. I committed 100% when it came to the research and the thesis development. And I actually completed the part-time one in just under 5 years. So I think I was moving at a pace while I was doing it. But in saying that, I had great supervisors, great support from the academics in Trinity College. And they knew I had an agenda that I needed to actually complete this, because I had spent approximately 20 years from the time I started in academia doing various different courses. And this was the pinnacle for me to get the D.Ed and to become a doctor from Trinity College. And I achieved that. It was a personal goal. It was a personal goal that I didn't intend to develop in my career. So I had no aspirations of moving from what I did, but I quickly moved up to the head of schools position and implemented a lot of the findings from the actual program itself. So thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Frank. Yeah, so that's Frank's trajectory is a really nice one there. Very, very sort of typical D.Ed of someone who comes in with a professional background, wishes to explore their own professional practice, and then takes that research that Frank had done and incorporate it into his own practice as well. Is Mags there? Because Mags from Cavan. Because I think you're a nice example of a PhD that, you know, can be about professional practice.
Yeah, and
as well there.
I wouldn't be typical in one way, in that I waited till I was retired from my full-time professional work. I just personally, I don't know if I'd have had the stamina, but my road to Damascus, Joanne asked us, you know, when we were thinking about this, to maybe answer 4 questions. And I'm a retired second level teacher of sciences, but in my informal teaching life, I was very, very involved in informal professional development, sort of what somebody had dubbed at the time guerrilla professional development, peer mediated Teach Meet, it's called, and I'd also volunteered in a group in my computer education group, SESI, in Ireland. And why I ended up doing a PhD was the Teach Meet thing was in my head. Why was it working, and why was it such a good thing for the people who were involved in it? And so I kind of said, well, there's only one way to, when I retired and I had time, there's only one way to find out, and that's to formalize it and do a PhD. It may have been, it could have been an Ed.D, but I needed the 6 years. I needed to sign up for the long haul. So I'm beginning year 5 of the 6 years. Why Trinity? I really didn't think of anywhere else, because I had friends with experience of doing both D.Ed and PhD in Trinity School of Ed. And somebody mentioned earlier on the School of Ed groups, and there's a group that works with School of Computer Science, the CRI group. And I knew quite a few of those people. I was working with them in my Teach Meet world, in other worlds. And I was, the only thing I didn't really know what my question was going to be. I wasn't focused on anything, except I was dead sure. I knew who I wanted for my supervisors, and I kind of focused on and went after those. And I was lucky enough to get them. Richard Millwood from the School of Computer Science, he was a research assistant and teaching over there. And Keith from this school, Keith Johnston from our own school here. I needed Richard because he understood Teach Meet, and I knew I needed Keith because his area was ICTs in education in Ireland. And actually, I'd say that's probably the best. The only focused thought I had was who I wanted for supervisors. That has worked out to be a really good thing. And I would say to people thinking, it's already been said, but just thinking about this, stepping into the world of research, and as Mary said, it really does change you. And you think at my age, you know, I'd kind of come to maturation and all of that. Not a bit of it, not a bit of it. I have grown more in the last 5 years than in the previous 55 as it was. But I would say to people coming into it, 2 things, a private one and a public one. In privately, once you do get into this group, and maybe the Ed.Ds would agree with that, certainly my PhD cohort, form a little support group, you know, WhatsApp, whatever it might be, that sometimes the question you need an answer to that's bugging you, it's in the group. Somebody else has already found out and done that little bit. So I would say form a social media group quietly among yourselves. And the other one we've mentioned, the stepping stones that Amy mentioned. Be public about your research, not shouty about it, but do find the stepping stones like EdCon, use our own postgraduate conference. And what that does, or what it does for me, and Keith would probably agree with this, is I go to not the very expensive big conferences, but the ESAI, the Educational Studies Association of Ireland, has an annual conference. There's a group called SCOTANS, which is north-south, which your work may or may not feed into it, but everything educational does. And I go to each of those just to present where I am in my work. So I'm in year, I've got past confirmation, ethics, field work is done, and now I'm drowning here in data and loving it. But I find that it doesn't seem as scary to say, oh, this huge 6-year journey is ahead of me, if I agree to report to my colleagues and my cohorts and tell the story of where I am now, sort of bookended between things like ESAI, SCOTANS. For your own professional world, there may be someplace else, the IPPN, you know, wherever it might be. And I have found, even in my 5 years, research and education is definitely growing and being, you know, listened to and sought after more and more. So I think that's me, Andrew.
Thank you, Mags. That's very complimentary of you. It's a very nice overview of your work and your research and how it's changed you, or changing you in the process of perpetual change. Kieran, do you want to say anything on your D.Ed?
Good evening, everyone. I certainly will. Absolutely, Andrew. As a second-year student, it's fascinating and really interesting listening to the other panelists. Some I know very well and some not quite well. But I think one of the major differentiations between the PhD and the D.Ed I'd like to get out there from the very start is the collaborative spirit that happens in the D.Ed. Mags mentioned there about, you know, setting up a WhatsApp or something like that. That happened first day with the D.Eders. So there was absolutely no, there was a complete understanding that we were in this together. And as someone who's come, I'm nearly 9 years, I can't believe, actually working in Trinity in a research group. And I still pinch myself that that is actually happening. Well, I can assure you I pinched myself many times when I started the D.Ed last September, October, never really thinking it was for me, never really feeling that as someone who has come late to the world of education, having worked in IT and business for many, many years, it never really felt that I was the academic sort. Well, I still have reservations about that, but what's happened with the D.Ed, it has changed my whole focus, my whole attitude on life. Some of the things Amy mentioned earlier, I thought was brilliant about how you are brought into the group, how you start feeling you are a researcher right from year one. And that sometimes can be very hard and very daunting, especially with the wealth of experience and knowledge that's in Trinity College. The area that I'm involved in primarily in the last 5-6 years is Erasmus projects and working across Europe with many different second level schools. So I've always seen myself as a practitioner, and what I'm really finding fantastic about having taken that step to get involved in the D.Ed is to put the academic background to all of the areas that I have been working in over the last number of years. So my research is focusing on professional learning communities and crossing over into communities of practice. I have been working, as I said, with different European schools, and you know when the penny drops and you say to yourself, God, we really need to find better ways for teachers to be able to collaborate and work together. And in Ireland, we are changing, there's absolutely no doubt about that. But I'm really hoping that the area that I'm involved in will actually be something that will continue and push for more change in Irish education and allow teachers to really share their knowledge. That's the most important thing, I think. Thank you very much. I'm enjoying myself. We have great laughs as well, I can assure you. Andrew is the great man for the jokes. Some work, some don't, but you can't have everything in life.
Oh, now you tell me, Kieran, I'm most disappointed. I thought they all were. You just laugh out of sympathy, don't you, most of the time? Thank you for that. I know it's coming up to 5 to 7, and I hope people aren't too anxious to get away, but I would like to bring in some of our other students as well. Again, I think it's really nice to sort of share their experiences with everyone and each other as well, and also with me as well, and sort of find out what you've really been getting up to as well. So Tanya, you out there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Do you want to tell the world what you've been up to for the past few years? Tanya's coming towards the end of hers, and Tanya's would be what would be, you know, a fairly typical PhD study, I think. I should know I'm supervising it, but yeah, I think it's very much within that PhD space.
Thank you, Andrew, for this nice introduction. So I'm Tanya Zubriski. I am in my last year of full-time PhD in a School of Education. My background is in finance. I used to work for Ernst & Young many years ago, but then I went into the academia and never looked back. Very happy here. I started my academic career in the University of Puerto Rico in the United States, where I worked in the Grants Proposals Office. And then I moved to Ireland and I got involved into several European Erasmus Plus projects. So became very interested in higher education research, particularly in higher education policy research. And there were so many opportunities I wanted to pursue. And I realized that for me to become a better researcher, it would involve studying for a PhD. So that brought me to Trinity. higher education research is quite a narrow area, and I heard of the CAVE. I don't know if you have CAVE Research Center in the School of Education. That stands for Cultures, Academic Values in Education Research Center. And I was very fortunate to find a supervisor. I actually have 2 supervisors who are highly interested in higher education research as well. So my research is on the how the academic profession is changing in the Institutes of Technology in Ireland. We now have our first technological university, TU Dublin, and more are underway. So I am looking at these merger processes as well. And this has been an incredible journey for me over the last 4 or 5 years, and it really transformed me. So I can totally relate to experiences that some people have been expressing here about that transformation process. And like Damien was saying earlier, so through my PhD research, I got to meet so many interesting people. I attended conferences, just like others were saying. I even wrote some publications. And there were a number of highlights from my time in Trinity. Maybe I will just mention a couple of them because I'm conscious of time. One highlight was participating in the annual School of Education postgraduate conference that Andrew had mentioned earlier. That's organized by the students. So for a couple of years, I participated in organizing it, and it's really great experience. Organizing a conference from start to finish, and then seeing the breadth of research that's going on in the School of Education in Trinity is just mind-blowing. You know, things that get researched, it's just so interesting, and you get to connect with people. You learn about their research, and then you want to reach out and talk about it, and that just creates this incredible network. Another highlight was the monthly School of Education research seminars that was mentioned earlier as well. Because in those seminars, you really learn about the research carried out by the academic staff in the School of Education. And that can be quite inspirational and quite informative and quite interesting. And the topics are very broad. So every month there would be a new topic, and important to keep an eye on those. I always remind myself to go to them. There were also day-to-day things that kept me going and inspired, like connecting with fellow PhD students is always great. And of course, the supervisory meetings. I always felt very supported by my supervisors, and really never felt that I couldn't reach out or couldn't ask something. So that's something that is very important, I think, on your PhD journey. Another highlight I wanted to mention is I was very fortunate to be nominated for a desk in Trinity Long Room Hub. That's an arts and humanities research center in Trinity. And that was really an exciting 2-year experience. I had a desk there, so I got to be alongside PhD researchers in Trinity from different disciplines. There would be coffee mornings where, again, researchers would talk about their research. And just really fascinating, nourishing environment for these 2 years in Trinity Long Room Hub. So if you have an opportunity to have a desk there, or even to engage in some way with this research center, please do. They do have a lot of events on their website, and they're also very interesting, arts and humanities related for the most part. And there are just such a great opportunities out there for early career researchers, and I would definitely highly recommend for you to explore them. And I wish you all the best of luck, and I hope you enjoy your journey in Trinity. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. One of the things that sort of mentioned, particularly, you know, the doctoral students within the school, and particularly for the PhD, because again, it's the way in which the program is designed. It's a very international collection of students we have and have had over the years as well. There we seem to be do very well, and again, students from other countries, lots of other nationalities, come and do their PhDs with us, and they do them very successfully as well. And I think that's also a great, wonderful cross-cultural learning that takes place between the students, between us as academics as well. There, you know, had wonderful opportunities over the years to work with students from lots of different cultures and different nationalities, and I think the students also interact as well. And I think that's a really sort of significant marker of the Trinity PhD. The D.Ed, again, it's a different kind of program. Again, because it's part-time, because it's practitioner focused, it tends to draw in students pretty much of a sort of indigenous, so to speak. So I'm just going to ask, is Liam, are you out there?
Hi, can you hear me there?
I can indeed. Now, Liam is a nice example, another typical D.Ed one, senior practitioner. You might confess your sins of where you practiced. came onto the program, and again, basically sort of used the program as a way of exploring your own professional practice and your own work. And just got through to the other end as well.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. And just to concur with what's been already said, and not wanting to repeat it again, and agreeing with all the observations of the colleagues and peers there. I came in as a mid-late career. I was a senior school inspector, and in the Department of Education in Ireland, in Dublin. One of the things the department is famous for, and that's being documented, is that it's a department where the urgent drives out the important. And that's a quote from a report on the work of the department. And it was always a challenge to try and find space for reflection and for looking deeply into issues, and very difficult to do within the department environment. So of course, it's just across the river then is Trinity. So when the D.Ed became available, fairly early on, I was in one of the early cohorts. It was something that I certainly thought was worth looking at, and agreeing with all the colleagues there. It was very welcoming. It was hugely supportive and inclusive. It was a wonderful team. The cohort that I was with was a diverse group of colleagues. Some of whom I'm still in touch with all those years later. And I was looking at an area of mathematics and I was looking at the area of self-efficacy in mathematics. And the supervision was terrific. And I suppose one of the things that happened for me in terms of, I was an evaluator working with schools, but I took on another identity as a researcher over the time. And it certainly was transformative in the way I went about my work, and I certainly grew out of it. And I had the opportunities within the department of sharing that expertise. I wasn't interested in career progression as such. I was, as a senior inspector, I was happy where I was, but I was interested in getting involved in policy development and practice development. And there were lots of opportunities within the department because I had been doing the D.Ed. It fed into that. Subsequently, then I left the department, and I've been doing work in the Middle East, in Dubai for a couple of years now, and the D.Ed was, the qualification in that context was very important. Having the doctorate, having the research background, all mattered in terms of making that progression from the Department of Education in Ireland to work in the Middle East. So hugely valuable, and one of the best professional moves I made in my professional life, so to speak. The advice I would give is to make sure that you love your topic, because you're going to have to live with it. I loved my topic, and I'm still involved with it. So it's a long-term relationship. You're signing up to a long-term relationship, and it took me a while. It took me a while to find what I really wanted to do, but once I was there, I stayed with it, and and there was terrific support around that from the team in the D.Ed. And as has been mentioned earlier, the cohort, there were 2 or 3 colleagues that in doing the D.Ed that I became particularly. Our work was going to maybe related, but that peer support, that collaborative piece was crucial for the long haul, because certainly after the year 3 or 4, you do begin to sag. The initial euphoria and enjoyment of the early years, when you realize you've got to write this thing up, and pull all your data together and all of that. But the team support was hugely beneficial and supportive. So that my advice around that is, certainly, as you mentioned earlier, that take advantage of that opportunity to have those professional and collegial supports within the group. So I would, yes, definitely, it was not necessarily for career progression as such, in terms of, but for more deeply as a professional. In terms of the evaluation work that I was involved in, it certainly it was a very important move, and I'd recommend it to anybody to seriously consider it. Andrew.
Thank you, Liam, for that. I'm just conscious of the time here, and again, we've gone past our 7 o'clock, and I just really wanted to see if I could open it up for questions. I know Marie and Evgenia are also going to say something as well, and I'm sort of sorry we sort of ran out of time for that, but maybe you could sort of join in the sort of questions and answers with participants as well. So I'm just going to stop my sharing there, and there's so if any participants who wish to ask any questions, then please do, and we'll try to answer them as briefly as possible.
I actually have I see that there is a question about funding opportunities.
Oh, go on then.
And if you are interested, I just can share some brief thoughts about how to get funding, basically, because I saw that somebody asking about it. Okay. I mean, there are several bodies, and actually I got a few scholarships to sponsor my PhD, and that's why it was very, one of the reasons I chose Trinity, because they provide a great scholarship platform, and I got scholarship from Trinity College Dublin, and I got another one from Higher Education Authority. Basically, you go with an interesting topic which maybe have a global dimension or applicable in a practical sense, and I think it's already like 50% of success, and another 50% just work on your motivation and what kind of researcher and what kind of skills you can bring for the wider community, and work on your transferable skills like research and analytical skills, and how you can apply the skills in your future career, and not necessarily in academia, but everywhere in private sector or government. And I think that the tips may help to secure certain funding for your PhD or other studies. That's it.
Thank you, Evgenia. Does anyone else want to bring any questions? Or have we answered them all? I think we've answered them all. Okay. If no one else has got anything they want to add, does any of the other panelists want to add anything before we wrap up? Anne, Damien, Keith? Nope.
Just Andrew, if I'd at the risk of repeating myself, let me just invite people who are present tonight, reflect on what you've heard, reflect on your own thoughts here. Please don't view this as a once-off, that this is your only chance to find out about Trinity's PhD and the D.Ed. We're here the whole time in virtual land, and my real advice is to go reflect, think, and do reach out to staff. You have ideas, or you might use Valerie there in the chat looking for ideas. Come to us, make contact with us, engage in a conversation. It might be an email conversation initially. We can do Zoom like this. People will come back to you and just have a discussion. Get a discussion going around research and what you might want to do. This is really only the beginning of it. We'd love to hear more from you. So, and thanks so much for attending, and thanks to the panelists here. Thanks to
yes.
Staff in the school and our students and graduates. We really appreciate that you've taken the time this evening to come and talk about your experience.
Yes, I'd like to thank you as well, and I'd like to thank Joanne and Anne and Damien and everyone who's contributed as well to this, to make it a really sort of interesting discussion. As Damien said, contact us. We're open. we just like to talk to people. So please do communicate with us if you have any ideas or want to take the discussion any further. So on that note, I will close the meeting. So thank you very much for attending.
Thanks, Emil. Bye-bye.
Bye.